WEF, WHO, and globalist elites to discuss Disease X at upcoming summit, predictions of a pandemic 20 times more deadly than COVID-19. So let me start by defending Klaus Schwab. I know, not something you really ever thought you'd hear me say, but minor defense, and it probably doesn't cover the whole situation, but something to mention. When they say disease X, I think some people, especially the more schizo among us, will interpret that as they have a disease ready to go and they have code-named it disease X. No. What this is like a like disaster training or disaster simulations. Disease X is some, as of now, unknown deadly disease that we are using as the basis of this simulation. Because, the simulation could tell us a lot about population dynamics and how to properly protect people and resist the disease and stop it spread and all this stuff. That's the ideal version. That's what I'd like them to be using it for. Now, Disease X does mean that. It does mean a hypothetical disease. It's a worst case scenario, if you like. This is all the surface reasons. Behind the scenes, yeah, they may have a disease ready. They may have a disease, I don't know, they may do. They probably are studying the effects, not so that they can protect people, but so that they can control people. All this evil behind the scenes, but you cannot infer that just because they're running the simulation, they have a plan to make it reality. And I think some people reading this probably would interpret it that way, currently developing it. They might be. They very well might be. There are many opinions that COVID-19 was just a test run for a much worse viral outbreak. And it's possible. COVID-19 was, even if the release was not intentional, it was negligent. But the cover-up was intentional, and the attempt by the establishment to get people in the West infected by it was intentional as well. Even if they did not plan to utilize COVID like they did, they noticed while it was happening, ooh, that's interesting, and they might want to do it again. So I could read this article, but I think I know what's in here. I'll read a few paragraphs. The WEF, headed by Klaus Schwab, is convening global leaders to brace for an imminent threat referred to as Disease X. The term Disease X is used by the WHO to represent a hypothetical, unknown pathogen that could cause a serious international pandemic. Okay, thank you to Get With Pundit for making my point. I wasn't sure if they would. The world's most exclusive club of doom and gloom is predicting a pandemic 20 times more deadly than COVID-19. Now, that's a bit more in the wrong direction, because they're not necessarily predicting it. They're just accounting for the worst case. And again, that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt. If we want to pursue them on what they're actually doing, then we should get that information, and this is not that information. From this, we can only glean that they are. From this, you could glean that they're trying to help. They're trying to simulate the worst case scenario so that they can protect people. You can't predict from this that they're trying to hurt. Like evidentially, you can suspect, but you can't, claim with evidence yet. According to the WEF's official statement, the looming threat of Disease X has been cast into the spotlight by none other than the WHO. So again, like, COVID was nowhere near as bad as they said. Early months, it was bad. To old people, it was bad, like the flu is every year. But other than that, it wasn't actually very bad. Again, early, it was wise to protect against it. But after a certain point, it's less dangerous than the cold now, common cold. So it's silly to be that concerned. And they dramatically over-exaggerate it. I've told you about this, chat, many times. The case numbers and the death numbers are both complete bunk. They are dramatically overinflated from the real figures. Again, by definition, by misdefinition. I've gone through the entire explanation, but by every means you can imagine, pretty much redefinitions. And so the notion that the world's response to COVID-19 demonstrates that we are extremely vulnerable to disease is a bit questionable. For one thing, I believe that many countries were deliberately vulnerable to disease, particularly the US, as far as the Democrats had power to implement, and possibly other countries too. But aside from that, again, these diseases do happen sometimes. Compare COVID-19 to the Spanish flu. It's even with the inflated numbers, the dramatically maybe 10 or 100 times inflated numbers, it was nothing compared to the Spanish flu of 100 years ago. So I'm not that concerned really about a worldwide pandemic, except what it will give authoritarian bastards an excuse to do. It can be recalled WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, issued a warning just weeks after WHO officially ended the global health emergency related to COVID-19 that the planet must be prepared for a disease deadlier than COVID-19. The upcoming summit is scheduled. Well, how about just bomb? If we just delete China, then we don't have to worry about it anymore. Almost, and I say that very generously, every new disease comes from China. Clearly says, I'm worried about it because they're creating it. It's not natural. There was some suggestion early on that COVID-19 was not natural, that it was manufactured. I heard some arguments for it, and we had Dr. Allegedly on the stream telling us, no, it wasn't engineered. But he was also possibly mistaken about other elements of the disease as well, so I'm not sure about that. It's possible. The thing is with this that even if they create a pathogen like that, even if it genuinely kills millions, eventually you will start to get herd immunity because evolution dictates that diseases will gradually tend towards a state where they do not kill the host. They're just allowed to live in the host, which means less bad symptoms, more infective, but less deadly. Now, if a disease is so bad that it kills all of humanity before it gets to that stage, that could happen. And maybe they're developing something that bad. But no human wants all of humanity destroyed, at least no human with this kind of power, I don't think. So they will want to, what they want is fear. And they don't need the disease to be particularly deadly for that to happen. Like, they want it to be a particular level of deadly. They want a few million people in each country to die. They don't want 99% of the population to die. Even a few million may be too much for some places. So, again, given their goals, I'm not too concerned. The only thing that you might be concerned about is if you think they have a motive to just delete a particular type of person from the world. There's possibilities there, but I think they're pretty distant. Worth being aware of all of this stuff.